So all wheels are driven. It's just that little bit, I mean, like, pardon my French. It's just so quick. Hello and welcome to A Tribe Called Cars. My name is Griffin and today I'm finally driving the Tesla Model 3. Now I'm very excited to drive this car because it's the cheap one. The plan was to release the Halo model, show that Teslas are cool, that electric cars are fast, exciting, not that ugly to look at, and then they went with the big SUV, and now they can finally do the mass market model. And already in the UK, this car is, I think this month anyway, the third best-selling car in the UK. Now, of course, it's going to be that. There's the novelty, it's just arrived, so perhaps the figures are going to be a little bit higher. However, when I first started reporting on this car for a combo, for Drive Tribe and whatever, it was always going to be a big hitter if it was priced at an affordable price. So around that of a 3 Series, say 35,000. And the initial orders were obviously prioritizing the more expensive versions of this car. So the dual motor instead of the single motor, the long range, bigger battery instead of the lower capacity, shorter range. And that makes sense. They pay more, you look after them. But now we're at a point where Tesla sort of wants to reach a critical mass to keep getting people into electric cars. And this is the thing to do it. And that's why the price was so important. And so here we are in virtually near silence. As with all Teslas, it is very pleasant. It is also very barren in here, very empty, just like in the S and the X. In fact, this one is even more bare. You've just got the 15-inch screen, the steering wheel, a couple of buttons, your pedals obviously, useful. And that's it really. It is just you, and in this case, 2 electric motors and some nice white trim. Now, being the dual motor means it has a lot more oomph. There isn't a ludicrous mode version, although that has just been mentioned at the time of making this video. So it's going to come at some point. However, I mean, this thing is obscene anyway. All Teslas are very fast. Even the, I think it was the 75 I originally tested in 2013. Geez, that was a long time ago. But yeah, I remember testing the P100D, and it's with ludicrous mode, I should add. And it's an absolute animal. All electric cars are inherently fast because you get torque from as little as 0 RPM, some are 1100 RPM, 1500 RPM, depending on the motor type, I believe, but it's instant. It really is instant. Even in the new Nissan Leaf, the acceleration will leave most cars for dust. The difference between the dual motor Teslas and sort of lesser electric cars is that this thing will go beyond legal speeds obscenely fast. I mean, we're already at 70. I just tap the throttle and like that you go. There is nothing really like a Tesla to drive. They're just very smooth, very quiet, very relaxed. It's effortless. And actually, this feels just a little bit perhaps tighter than the last Model S and X I drove. The steering just feels a little bit more connected to the road. Seems very agile. There's a little bit of roll, but ultimately it's meant to be comfortable. And that's what this thing is. Here on the motorway, it really is absolutely pleasant. So pleasant. Interestingly, all cars, even the most basic Model 3, comes with Autopilot. So you get the adaptive cruise, which keeps you a certain distance from the car in front, so that controls your speed for you. And then you get the lane assist, which keeps you between the lines. So a combination of those two gives you a really good taste of autonomous driving, certainly good enough for most people. Now, if you want the car to change lanes for you when you indicate, then you have to pay for the more premium version. And that also gets you GPS navigation and that kind of stuff. So really, you don't need to. The car benefits from the comfort, ease of use, and safety without having to get the top model, and that's brilliant. And that obviously helps the Tesla become a safer car and get its 5-star NCAP, Euro NCAP. There was a story recently that said Teslas have crashed so few times that there isn't enough data to know how safe they are, which I think is the ultimate compliment. Now, I have to say, some people haven't really liked the interior. It's a bit too barren for some. There's not a lot going on. Bauhaus, as I always like to call it, but it feels like you're sort of more enclosed and wrapped in this. And the old days of having just this big column here, row here with nothing in it have gone. You used to put your keys here, accelerate, and you'd have to get it out the boot when you got to wherever you're going. But now there's 3 little cubby storage holes. There's the big armrest. It's just a more practical car. It's actually got a fairly large boot, and even with my 6-foot frame in here, reasonably long legs, I'm very comfortable. There's a lot of reach on the wheel, but equally there's still a good amount of space in the boot and a good amount of space for those stuck in the rear. You're not going to get anyone in the middle seat. It is 4, and it's not like the Model S with the 3 or the Plus 2, so you can have up to 7. But then it is a BMW 3 Series sort of rival. It's a smaller car. On the flip side, that makes it more manoeuvrable, and that makes it lighter, it makes it easier to drive in traffic. You can sneak down roads you're not meant to and find it easier to park. So actually for me, this is kind of the sweet spot. And when the Y comes along, which is based on this, you'll get the practicality without really too much of the hassle, and that again is a good thing. You do get used to the S and the X, of course you do, like any car. But when it comes to parking and somebody is a bit too far to the line, you're not going to notice as much in this car, so just a little less frustrating. And of course, being a lot cheaper, you can relax more with this car. You know, if something bad does happen, it's not a 60 to 100, 150k car. This one I'm in now is 55,000, so it's not exactly cheap. But if you get the base one at 35k and you just absolutely run it into the ground as your business car, just the fuel benefits, the taxation benefit in kind, you're gonna be laughing, basically. In fact, I believe you can lease this thing for as little as $350 a month, which is a little bit more than other cars. But once you factor in all the other costs, the fewer repairs as well. Remember that an electric motor has fewer parts to go wrong, so in theory, it should be more reliable than a combustion engine. You end up with some rather tempting cost benefits. Of course, though, if you don't have the long range, you're going to spend a little bit more time charging the car. So, for instance, my dad, he drives from the southeast up to Cheltenham, so he would probably have to stop once, maybe twice if he's going to use his car while he's there. Of course, if he has a charging point at the destination, then whatever he's doing, just plug it in and it's ready for the next day or in an hour or two, whatever. And of course, the superchargers charge very, very fast, so it's not a huge issue, and having the longer range version gives you a little bit more space to breathe. You know, you're less anxious if you've got 50 miles to go because you've done actually 200. It just gives you that little bit more relaxation. But most people don't drive 3 or 4 hours solid without having a break, without going to the toilet, without having a stop. And of course, when you stop in a petrol car, yes, you can get in, you can get out, fill up. But while you're going to the toilet and while you're buying a coffee, the car is charging. So although you're having to spend a little bit longer, the car is actually getting ready for you while you do other things, as opposed to petrol and combustion. Yeah, fine, you can do it in 5 minutes, but you also need to go to the toilet and buy the coffee and let the kids stretch their legs and let the dog vomit because it's car sick and all of these things that add up. It's just about adjusting your habits. But if the incentive is there because it saves you money, then I think actually, yes, a lot of people could make this work. If you only go drive to the shop 6 times a week and then you have one long journey every now and then, yeah, fine, the hassle of that long journey might be annoying, but for the rest of the time, this thing is costing you substantially less. And there are lots of people who've been very nerdy who have done spreadsheets comparing petrol and combustion cost per mile, and the benefits are noticeable. And even if the government rolls back the incentive when you buy the car, the plug-in grant, which it probably will as more of them come, they want to make their tax obviously, and they're losing it through petrol revenue. So, but yeah, it is definitely going to save you money in theory. Of course, mentally you'll then justify, well, I may as well get the dual motor, yeah, it's gonna be another 10-15k with all the other extras, but in the long run it's fine. And I guess if you've got the money and you can, why not? But I'm not sure this car needs to be spec'd massively to feel like it's the future. It really does feel rather special in all of its forms. And there is a little bit of road noise in here. We're at 60 miles an hour, but it's not especially annoying, it's fine. Also, some of the plastics do look a little, I mean, they're spongy, You get that texture that sort of reminds me of, I don't know, it's not especially pleasant, but it's fine, it's okay. The thing is with a Tesla is when they first came out, yes, there were panel gaps, and yes, there were some issues with the Model X. You had that big gap that wasn't doing anything up here. It was all a little odd, but when the car's moving, you didn't notice at all. You didn't care because it just felt like something from the future, and this still does. Every time I get in the Tesla, it feels that way, and it's a nice feeling. It does feel like progress. But also, as coming from someone who's driven a McLaren Senna 600 LT, various Ferraris, Lamborghinis, humble brag, sorry about that, it also feels dynamically good. I mean, this thing has lapped faster than a lot of very fast cars, and of course they're putting the S on a Nürburgring, and it's going to hopefully upset the Taycan. We will see. Of course, people are complaining Model S isn't standard, but then neither was the Taycan, so everyone's playing a little bit fast and loose with the rules. Oh, nearly missed my turning. See, there you go, prime example. It just goes, point and shoot, no fuss at all, very dynamically planted this car. I mean, if you need further persuasion, you just think I'm licking Tesla's ass. I mean, Chris Harris, Mr. Drift Everything, and pretty much just drive supercars, the ultimate dream for a motoring journalist, he bought one. I think if you're rich enough that this can be your second car, it's a no-brainer. If it's your first car and you can make it work, then it's still a no-brainer. It really is a special little vehicle. Of course, I'm going to be a bit more excited because I'm in the version of this which has more horsepower. It's got the two motors, one at the front, one at the back. So all wheels are driven. It's just that little bit, fuck me. I mean, like, pardon my French. It's just so quick. It really is. But of course, having the rear wheel drive single motor, it's still no slouch. It's still going to outdo your 3 Series diesel or your 2-litre 4-cylinder, and it's going to do it without waking up the kids in the back. I mean, listen to it now. It's just silent. It's wonderful. It's so quiet. Now, another thing I like is the regen. You can choose how much it sort of slows down when you take your foot off the pedal, and it imitates braking or engine braking, basically. So really, you never actually have to touch the brake, which is highly convenient. And if you reduce the regen so it's not as abrupt, you can really eke out the miles of this thing, which are sort of 200 miles plus, which is a good amount for an electric car. Tesla is still definitely ahead of everyone else when it comes to capacity to range. Mainly because they built the car to be electric from the beginning, so it's as light and efficient as possible, whereas, say, Mercedes has had to sort of retrofit to a combustion engine car. Even the Taycan, which was designed from the ground up as an electric, isn't able to go as far with the same capacity. So Tesla really has done a remarkable job. Okay, let's just give a little stab. The accelerator, here we go. Well, that was 30 miles an hour and wow, yeah, it's ballistic. It's easy for people to knock electric cars, and I understand some of the reasoning. I loved the sound of the McLaren Senna. It's phenomenal. It's beautiful to hear these old race cars shaking the sort of foundations around you. Their V8s, V10s, V12s. It's amazing. It's what I grew up on. But there are other things that make a car exciting, that make a car interesting and memorable, and engine sound is a part of it, but it really isn't everything. The fact is, I really did enjoy driving the Model S when it first came out, and the faster it got and the more equipped it got, just the better it became. It was sporty enough to be fun, but also effortless enough to be a good cruiser, and the 3 has that vibe to almost the same extent, really. I'm guessing with the rear wheel drive and being a bit slower, it wouldn't feel quite as luxurious, but it's definitely close enough. So we've done some motorway driving. Now it's time to see if we can go a little faster around corners, because, you know, that's what you do in a car. Makes sense. As you can hopefully see, it's very happy right now. It is actually not really rolling. Feels 50-50 weight. And the fact that power goes to all 4 wheels really does inspire confidence. It always feels very, very ready to go. More than happy to keep traction in a corner, as opposed to rear wheel drive where it could be that the back decides to do its own thing and you have to react rather quickly. And again, engine braking, doing absolutely everything for me, not even touching the brake, and away we go. Every time. You'd think it would get boring and get old, but acceleration is just fun, and in Teslas it's particularly savage. You need to spend a lot of money to get similar levels of performance. Or not have any rear seats and have a catering, but yeah, a little bit harder to persuade the wife, that one. Or husband. Have to be fair these days, eh? Making progress in the Model 3 is just wonderfully easy. These country lanes, you just let the regen claw back some power for you on the blind corners, and then when there's nothing coming, you can just absolutely let it rip and laugh as everything is left behind. It does feel like it has a reasonable amount of grip. I'm not pushing too hard because I'd rather take this car back to Tesla in one piece, which is always nice. It's definitely better for getting a car a second time. But it's just hammering along, and these roads are really not particularly smooth. Quite big undulations, but it is more than happy. And again, it's gripping really, really well. No surprises at all with what it's meant to be doing. I mean, powering down here, and it's finding it very easy. More than me, who's trying to concentrate in this quite interesting light on very thin lanes with cars possibly coming at me. We're not going too fast, by the way, before anyone complains it's dangerous. We are doing a sensible speed. And of course the limit is 60 here anyway, so it just feels so nice to drive. I mean, you can talk about whether something is capable and handles well and doesn't have understeer or does, or has oversteer or doesn't, you know, those kind of things, but ultimately you want a car just to feel nice, feel pleasant at all speeds, especially in the UK, because you spend so much life stuck in traffic. It's quite nice that the car is enjoyable when you're not doing anything fun, but also it's nice when you push a bit that you get something back. Now I find with the Teslas you kind of lose that top end of ridiculousness. I mean, if you had a track and rear wheel drive and you could get this to drift, you'd probably have a huge laugh and it was raining. But I think that's where a good sports car would take over and win. But up until that point, this thing is really enthralling, actually. Another thing I've noticed actually on this short drive is that the brakes are really, really decent. I mean, I'm not pushing it to the limit to find out where they start to fade, but being a lighter car than the S and the X, it really does give you a huge amount of braking power, and it's so even. There's no sort of squirm. The tyres and the chassis and the suspension all able to keep it dead straight. I imagine in the wet maybe it would get a little bit more upset, but again, it just does things in a way that is unfussy. So do I like the Tesla Model 3? Well, as you can probably tell, yes, very, very much so. It is a phenomenal car. It really, really is. Of course, this is early days, but I've lived with Teslas on a longer term basis, so I know that side of things, and I can imagine that you just have to be a little bit more careful planning because you have the sort of sub 300 range. That's fine. I mentioned that a lot. And of course, if you really trick this out, then it stops being a 3 Series competitor and you start to get to M3 territory, which isn't so good. But at the price range it is, even for the most basic, you are getting a hell of a lot of car. One that really does make it hard to justify staying with the combustion engine. I mean, yeah, fine, if you want an Audi or a BMW on your drive, cool, but at this price point, I would take this. I would make this work. And that's as someone that does do a lot of long journeys. At this money, there are other options though. So you could go for the e-Niro, the Kia, got the Kona Electric, which doesn't have quite the same range, but those cars are so hard to order. I mean, they're SUV a little bit more practical, but yeah, good luck trying to get one. The waiting list, I think last time I checked, was sort of a year. And you've got more and more electric cars coming, which is just only going to make it harder for companies to source the batteries. But yeah, speaking to Tony Whitehorn, the then UK CEO of Hyundai, because there are so few batteries, you're going to have a combination of different technologies. Tesla's Gigafactory really does give it a huge advantage because other companies just cannot get the batteries fast enough. And so they're going to have to do other powertrains just to satiate the market, but mainly because they have no choice. They really don't have a choice. And for me, hybrids do make sense. I mean, if you're a taxi driver or you do really long miles, yes, fine, it's nice to be able to fill up. Plug-in hybrids, you get a bit of both. You go to the shop, you can do 30, 35 miles on electric alone. Wonderful, great, makes sense. No emissions locally. All is well. For me, I kind of see it as a go hard or go home. You know, if you want to be a little bit friendlier to the planet and whatnot, then if you can make a fully electric work, fine. Because the world really does need a little bit of a shake-up when it comes to its resourcefulness and wastefulness. In cars like this, if you've got solar panels, or you're sensible when you use your power, and you can charge this off peak, of course, so it's cheaper and spares the grid, then you are doing a little bit to help the planet. You really are. And as the electric grid in the UK and other countries becomes more renewable and less coal-based, then actually the car becomes even less emissions heavy. And no one dies of cancer from particulates when you're near the car. So there are so many benefits of electric that a lot of people often overlook. But the simple fact is, when I spoke about Tesla in 2013, 2012, around there, people sort of laughed, you know, it'll never catch on, blah, blah, blah. But it has caught on. Every manufacturer is diversifying with hybrids and electric. Some have said they will only do electric. Some have said the entire range will feature electric powertrains in some form, Volvo for instance. So whether or not you think the electric feature is crap, it is so far ahead of hydrogen and it is so inevitable that, yeah, you should probably adjust your opinion. Anyway guys, thank you for listening to me ramble about the Tesla Model 3. I hope you found it useful. Please subscribe if you'd be so kind. We just broke 1,000, which is amazing. It's taken about a year to do that. It's a slow burner, the YouTube thing, but I'm enjoying it. Anyway guys, please subscribe. Thank you for watching. I've been Ben Griffin and this has been A Tribe Called Cars and the Tesla Model 3. Take care, bye.